Welcome to Minnesota Crime Wave Presents. I'm Carl Brookins, author of Bloody Halls, an urban crime novel. This is program number 27 in our series. With me in the studio are my elegant and exemplary and wonderful, useful co-hosts, Ellen Hart, author of the Jane Lawless Mystery Series, and William Kent Kruger, author of the Cork O'Connor series. Now, they're both fine mysteries. I'm emphasizing that because I got a little heat last time for not being equal with these people.
One of us was a prima donna, as I recall.
I can't remember who it was.
Coming up after we sort some of this out is our guest, a serious, well-known author of fine fiction named Judith Guest. Adaptations of crime novels have always been I was going to say a minor bone of contention, but actually it's not so minor. And adapting them to, it's one thing to talk about translations, but it's something else to talk about making films out of them. And of course, Judy Guest had a book called Ordinary People that turned into a fine film. But what about movie adaptations of novels? You got anything to say about that?
Yeah, the first thing I want to do is talk a little bit about how difficult it is to get a book made into a movie, period. A number of years ago, my work was optioned by Hollywood, and when I went out to talk to the producer, a guy who was with Raystark Productions, one of the things he said to me was, what you have to remember is that 8 out of 10 books that are optioned for Hollywood don't ever reach the screen. And he said one of the problems is this. My job, he told me, is to go to all of the studios that might be involved in the production. So if you look at the trailer, or you look at the credits, it's a Moonbeam production in association with
14
Flagler
other
Films of a whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So he says, I have to get all of the executives in each of those companies on board with this project, and that takes a while. And he said, what happens invariably is that I get everybody together, we're all on board, I go home, the next day I get up, they've all been fired. They brought in new Harvard MBAs, and I have to start the whole process over again. So it's just amazing that a book ever makes it to film. And then, of course, a good adaptation of a book is a whole other
Well, you know, most
matter.
of the people that we know who have had movie options, and you have, and I had a movie option, they never happen. And we have friends right now who have, movie options, and the likelihood of them happening is very, very small. There was a wonderful book about Hollywood that I read many years ago called Hello, He Lied. And I think that says a lot. I had a friend who had a book that got all the way up to Michael Eisner's desk. And Eisner looked at it and said, this is really good. We need to do more comedies this year. And that was the end of that.
Gee,
It's
my
so...
son-in-law knows Michael Eisner.
Yeah?
Of course, he's not where he was then.
Not anymore, no.
So what are some films that are good films that have been made from good books?
Outside of Ordinary People?
Well, in addition to Ordinary
Sorry
People.
about that. I'll have to ask her how she
I think-
likes that movie.
My all-time favorite is To Kill a Mockingbird.
Okay, and I would
Great
agree.
book,
Okay.
great film.
I would agree.
Gone
I think
with the Wind?
Gone with the Wind. I think Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil was a very good adaptation of that book.
Yeah.
I think Dolores Claiborne was a wonderful adaptation of the book.
I never actually read the book. It's a hell of a good movie, but I
It's
never
one of my
read the
favorites.
book.
Yeah. Gone Baby Gone, Mystic River.
Maltese Falcon.
Yeah.
Maltese Falcon, you go
Yeah.
back to the classics. I've always liked The Big Sleep. It's one of my favorite movies, even though it's a very convoluted sort of a thing.
Yeah.
Humphrey Bogart.
Okay.
Humphrey Bogart's.
They did
version
it.
of
They
that.
did a later one.
Much later.
Yeah,
but
which was
it's
horrible.
not as successful,
Yeah.
no.
I think Bloodwork was a pretty good adaptation of the Michael Connelly.
Yeah, okay.
I was a little disappointed in
Really?
it.
He was,
Okay.
I don't know this for a fact, but I've heard that he didn't like it much at all.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What makes a
know,
good
not sure.
adaptation? Do you think readers' expectations ought to be a part of that?
Well, it depends on whether you've read the book or not. I mean, it's very hard if you've read the book and loved the book for the movie
All right.
to live up to that.
I agree, but I'm going to give you my standard rant about these kinds of things.
Yeah.
Comparing a book
Yeah.
to the movie is crap. I mean, the fact is they are both widely different media. They're done in much different ways, and I think each one ought to be able to stand on its own. I don't, if you make a movie out of a really bad book and it turns out to be a really good movie, I don't think you say, well, it was a really much better movie than the book. I mean, that's comparing apples to oranges.
I disagree,
End of rant.
but that's
I
all
know
right.
Okay,
Yes, it is all right. Really.
So what are some really bad adaptations?
The V.I. Warshawski thing, you might. But
That was, that was a killer one for me in the 60s. I thought Jurassic Park was terrible compared to the book.
okay.
I thought
You
the
have
Da
time for
Vinci
two
Code
more.
was much worse than
you?
the book.
I, I've been very disappointed with all of the Hillerman translations to screen, even though Robert Redford was involved in some of those. They never lived up to my expectation as a reader.
Yeah.
See,
There we
you had to
go.
get that
There we
in.
go.
You had to
Well,
get
but, yeah.
Well, that takes care of that. We're going to take a short break, and then we'll be right back with our guest, Judith Guest. We're back. Our guest is Judith Guest, and Mr. Kruger, that fine novelist, is going to introduce her to you for the audience. I'm going to beat you guys over the head with that phrase.
Thank you, Carl. Judy Guest is the author of Ordinary People, known to readers worldwide, probably because of that, and because of the Academy Award-winning movie directed by Robert Redford that was made from your novel. You're probably known to everybody worldwide, readers are not. At least you're one of my heroes. You are also the author of 4 other novels, a number of short stories, and an interesting piece titled The Mythic Family, which you call a chap book. I thought that was interesting. You were born in Michigan and been a writer all your life, but by your own admission, for much of your life, you were a closet writer.
What does that mean?
She wrote in the closet.
In the closet.
You wrote in the closet?
Afraid to come out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Afraid to come out.
And also, by your own admission, you were for a very long time a writer who simply could not finish things. It's a pleasure to have you with
Yes,
us
it
today.
is.
It's a pleasure to be here.
And my first question is, how did you become a writer who could finish things?
Well, I set that as a goal. That was what changed my life. I started lots and lots of things, threw them in a drawer when I got bored or scared or tired or whatever. And then I thought, I'm never going to find out if anybody else likes any of this stuff unless I finish something. And Ordinary People was the thing that I vowed, no matter what happened, no matter what kind of problems I ran into or what, I was going to finish it.
How much writing had you done before?
A lot.
A lot,
I
okay.
did it from the time I was a kid.
Okay.
And I also did it in college, but I never took any writing classes in college. It was too scary. I took an art class because I also like to paint. And I took an art class in college, and I got in there and I thought, these people are already artists. What am I doing here? And I did not want that to happen to me about writing.
Okay.
And it was totally subconscious, but I never took any writing courses because I didn't want to end up feeling like everybody in the room was better than me, and so I better just quit.
But you taught yourself to write by writing, and then
Yeah,
it
pretty much.
culminated in a wonderful book.
I think that's what everyone has to do, really.
Yeah, I do.
So